So that's what you do every time before you take your boat out and put on your inflatable life jacket. But now let's look at the annual maintenance procedure. And incidentally, there's no great standardization on this. Frankly, I'd probably do it every 6 months, but the ISO standard calls for annual maintenance. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up the life jacket and kind of fluff it out. So I'm going to remove the CO2 cylinder so that I don't accidentally inflate the vest. In doing so, I turn it counterclockwise and remove it. Now this is kind of interesting. This is a bayonet mount, meaning that you don't screw and screw and screw it in, you just turn it quickly. And it has this black ring at the neck. That black ring is your indication that this cylinder is good. If the cylinder had been used, it would look like this. See, this ring is broken free, and that's how the inflator determines whether the cylinder has been used without actually having to inspect it. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is unscrew to find out where the water sensing element is, and there it is. Now this is a different kind of inflator than we looked at before, same company, different style, and here's the little water sensing element. My general rule is I'd replace them every year. They're not very expensive, but they actually can last in storage a couple of years and then on the life jacket for a couple of years. But I say once a year. For a couple of bucks, why wouldn't you do that? Okay, we put that aside. Now I'm going to orally inflate the life jacket. Incidentally, let's see how many breaths it takes. This has 24 pounds of buoyancy, which is not our standard. This is a slightly lower buoyancy jacket. Let's see how many breaths that is. So you get about 8 pounds of buoyancy for every breath of air, assuming that you could blow that thoroughly into it. Okay, now it's completely inflated. You'll notice the inflator doesn't leak because it has a one-way valve there. So after it's inflated, I could actually sort of break something or the CO2 cylinder could unscrew and it wouldn't deflate. So now what I'm going to do is leave it in a dry, warm place for a couple of hours. Longer is better, but frankly, you're going to know whether it leaks in a couple of hours. That's why it's important to inflate it as hard as you can. Okay, we'll pretend that was 8 hours. Still feels pretty firm, hasn't leaked. But if it had leaked, we have a couple of choices. One is, frequently the blow tube may have a little salt debris in it or little dirt, and this green valve will just slightly not seat. To test that, you can put a little spit on it, and if it starts bubbling, you know that the valve's the problem. The other thing you can do is you can just take the entire life jacket and immerse it in clean water. If you see air coming out of the fabric or out of the seams, you don't have a life jacket anymore. You can't have any leaks. If that happens, you have two choices. Either cut it up and throw it away, or possibly send it back to the vendor and see if they have a manufacturing defect. But a leaky life jacket is no life jacket. Now let's go and put it back into its ready-to-go condition. On the blow tube, you have this little black cap. And the black cap both can protect the blow tube like that, and it can also be used to deflate. So we turn it around backwards. It's important to get the last little bit of air out of there. Now, if you've inflated this with CO2 because you pulled the ripcord, the bladder's full of CO2. And if you start breathing CO2, you can pass out really, really quickly. I know, I've had it happen. So, since I orally inflated it, I'm going to try to kind of push the little valve down and pull down the last bit of air. Okay, that's as much air as I can get out of it. Now it's time to repack it. I'm going to show you a general packing method. It's not that different from one model to another. But again, the instructions are found inside the jacket. So you've always got the instructions. They're always printed on Tyvek. It says do not remove. It's like a mattress label. And so this will show us how to fold it back up if we've forgotten. Okay, first thing, I'm going to check the date on this. Yep, it's good to go. This will only fit one way, so I'm going to rotate it and all of a sudden it slides in. Screw this down completely. Notice the red indicator indicating there's no CO2 cylinder there, and you have these red pegs showing there's no CO2 cylinder. They're trying every way they can to tell you don't use this. It uses a 24-gram cylinder. Let's see. Oh, I happen to have one. This is the one I removed. Just stick it in there, push in straight, and rotate about 20 degrees or so. You'll notice that when I put the CO2 cylinder back in, the indicator turned back to green. If either the CO2 cylinder is missing, or it's been punctured, or the water sensing bobbin is missing, it'll show red. That's the advantage of a 1F inflator. Now we've got to fold this thing up. This turns out to be a pretty easy one to put away. I'm going to fold under the sides into sort of thirds. And I keep on wanting to stretch it out and flatten it. I want to make sure that my jerk to inflate is sticking down the bottom. This particular life jacket has snaps in addition to the Velcro, which is really a nice feature because the snaps give you perfect alignment. You know exactly where to put it together. Okay, that's one side. Boy, this almost folds itself. Oh, I didn't point out, this has a whistle that's on the inside. And it also has a place where you can write down when you have repacked it, so you can have proof that it was done, say, every June or something. Okay, as I said, that almost folds itself. Okay, now for the top, I'm going to sort of fold it over a couple of times and then fold in the corners. And we're good to go. If I were to do this again, I'd probably slide the bladder down, but you can still see the green indicator. I didn't quite get the right alignment here. Now, the whole process that you saw, except for waiting for the bladder to lose air or not lose air, is just a couple of minutes. So even though a year may be the recommended interval, you can do this pretty frequently and make sure that your safety equipment is good to go.